All right. So again, I want to thank everybody for attending today's webinar, and also thank Genesis Credit Union for hosting today, the Money Concepts for Teens and Young Adults. My name is Dawn Watson, and I am a Partner Experience Manager at Green Path Financial Wellness. Green Path is a national nonprofit financial education organization, and our mission is to empower people to lead financially healthy lives. I am excited to be one of your hosts. I am very passionate about providing financial education to everyone, especially for those teens and young adults. I have spent 27 years as a financial wellness expert, which is what Green Path calls our certified credit and housing counselors. And I have 3 children who now are adults and that have experienced and navigated through the various topics that we are going to discuss today. Bill, do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself as well?
I sure do. Hello, everyone. My name is Bill Folks. I am also a Partner Experience Manager here at Green Path. I started at Green Path in 2008 as a counselor, or as Dawn mentioned, we call them financial wellness experts now. I started out as a counselor, and I did that till 2015. That's when I joined the Partner Experience team, and I've been working directly with our credit union partners and their members ever since then. And as always, it is my pleasure to be with you to share this exciting information. So that actually, I want to take a couple of seconds just to share with you what our agenda is going to look like today. First, we're going to be talking about your first job for the young folk, or even the parents of young folk who are joining us today. What you can look at or might expect from your first job, and then we're going to talk about some big decisions that you're going to need to make. You're going to need to make big decisions your entire life, including some that will need to be made as you approach some of these milestones that we're going to be talking about here. Some of those milestones might be paying for college, and that is assuming you go to college. How are you going to pay for it? If you decide to go to college, your time there, your college years, could look a lot different from the college years of some of your friends. When it comes time to enter the workforce, are you going to go to trade school? Will you go to college, or will you go directly into the workforce? Will you just go ahead and get a job? And finally, what are some of the best ways to establish credit? Those are things that you should be thinking of throughout your entire working life, especially as you start thinking about things such as buying a home or buying a car. You need to have good credit established for those things. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at our first milestone, and that is your first job. You've been online, you've turned in multiple job applications, you've gone on several interviews, and finally you've landed your first job. It can be pretty exciting making money and making plans to spend that money and having some financial independence from your parents. But let's take a look at some of the basics, what some of those basics are going to look like. Things like your paycheck. So your first 2 weeks of work are over, and you just received your first check. And when you look at your direct deposit, you might be in for a shock. In your mind, you might have calculated, okay, if I earn $15 an hour and I work 20 hours, then my check should be $300, which is what it comes to if you multiply 15 by 20. But your check is likely to look a lot different than that. It's going to be a lot less. And that's because, and before you go to your employer and complain, let's talk about why that's going to be. The amount of money you actually receive in your bank account or your paycheck is called your net pay. Your net pay. Your gross pay is the amount before they take out any deductions. A deduction is money taken out from your paycheck to cover things such as benefits and taxes. Taxes that might be subtracted from your paycheck may include federal income tax and state income tax. Those are pretty common. Everybody's going to pay those, as well as most people are going to pay Social Security and Medicare taxes. And depending on where you live, you may have additional taxes such as city taxes. Some common employment benefits are health and dental and vision insurance. Some of you will be covered by your parents, which is great, but that's not going to last forever. Usually there's a cost to the employee for these insurances, and for most of us, your parents stop paying that at some point. Your parents' insurance should stop paying that at some point, I should say. Disability insurance provides income in the event that you become disabled while working. That's also something that can be deducted from your pay. And retirement and pension plans is something that can be deducted from your pay. And this is where you can contribute money to a retirement plan that your employer sets up for you. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more later on. Once you take all of these deductions into account, you will find that your net pay may be only about 70 to 80% of your gross pay. So now let's turn our attention to managing that 70, 80% the best way you can.
So in order to know how much of your paycheck you should deposit versus spend, it helps to have some financial goals, goals that can be broken up into short-term or long-term goals. So short-term goals typically are goals you want to achieve within 3 to 12 months, like having money to go out to a concert or go buy a new tablet. Long-term goals are something that may take you more than a year to accomplish, like saving for a down payment on a car, working towards paying for college, or for some people, maybe even starting to save for retirement. A savings account will make it easier to reach your goals. If you don't have a savings account yet, consider opening one. You can contact Genesis to discuss which type of savings account would be best for you. If you're under 18, they have a youth savings account that you may want to consider. So in order to accomplish your goals, you want to make sure that they're considered SMART goals. So they're specific. This is the what, where, and when, how you're going to do it. That they're measurable, determine how you can actually measure the progress towards reaching the goal. That it is attainable. So we want the goal to be challenging, but not completely impossible. We want it to be relevant to you. It should be something that matters to you. And then, of course, timely. You have set the time frame to accomplish your goal so that you can remain focused on achieving that goal. So for instance, you could say, I'm going to set aside $20 from each biweekly paycheck starting on September 16th so that I have $160 by the end of the year to buy some AirPods. So it's very specific. You have the timeline, you know it's realistic because of your paycheck that's coming in. You've determined that you can afford it, and that you're going to be able to measure it by checking your savings account to make sure the money is being deposited faithfully. So it's important to consider what your goals are, and then, of course, create SMART goals with them. So if you're going to try to set aside a certain amount per paycheck, consider creating a budget. A budget is essentially money in versus money out. Some typical expenses that you may want to include in your budget could be, again, money for your goals, some additional savings, gas if you need to pay for it. If you have a car, maybe you have to pay for your cell phone, some food or entertainment expenses when you go out and hang out with friends. So consider everything that you're going to be responsible for once you have this first job. So it's not just what's coming in from that payroll that you could incorporate into your budget. So if you are doing odd jobs, if you get some type of an allowance, if you're regularly receiving gifts, as long as they're fairly consistent, these are things that you could also include as far as income in to help cover the expenses of your budget. When creating your budget, I would recommend talking with your parents. For those that are parents, make sure you talk with your children about what expectations are going to be set for what they're going to have to pay, what you're going to continue to pay. Once you determine your income and your expenses, you'll need to make sure you're on track with your spending. Have you ever had a lot of cash one moment and then a few days later or even a few hours later, it disappears and you're left to wonder, where did it go? Tracking what you spend your money on will help you decide if your spending is in line with your goals and your long-term plan. So remember, if your income or expenses change, you will need to revise your budget. Some people like using a simple notebook to keep a diary of sorts to track your spending. Don't forget about technology. There are some apps that you can use. Also, maybe check with the credit union about what options that they have for managing the budget. So it's just important, again, to know what you're spending, what you're saving for, what your income is, what your expenses are, and then being able to make sure you're following that budget. So let's see an example of a student trying to follow a budget. So this student makes $60 per month. It's enough to pay a cell phone bill and have $20 left over for going out with friends and doing the fun things that they want to do. So it's the middle of the month and this person has spent $16 of their entertainment money and has $44 left, but only $4 of that is really left for entertainment. What his friends asked him to join them for a movie, which cost $12. So he has to make that decision. Am I going to go ahead and do that, or am I going to save it for another goal or something I need to pay for? For example, he definitely needs to still pay for his cell phone bill. So if he didn't, he's going to have to realize that he's going to be short, and how is he going to, or she going to actually manage that? So every day we're going to encounter decisions on what to do with our money. And this is just another reason that knowing your budget and tracking those expenditures is so important. So I am sure every one of us here has probably purchased something that we regret later. I know I have. Bill, how about you?
I sure have. You know, I have. I've told this story a few times, and I'm going to tell it to you guys. When I was 21 years old, I was working part time for the city of Dearborn, Michigan, which most of you are from around here, so you know where Dearborn is. And I was working part time, and I decided I needed a car. But instead of going out and buying something reasonable or economical like a used car, I decided I wanted a brand new car. Now, keep in mind, I was only working part time for the city at the time. And I looked at my budget. I went to figure out what kind of car it was. I was able to estimate how much my car payment was going to be, and I figured out that I could afford the car payment with what I was making with my part-time job. It never occurred to me to take into account how much my insurance was going to be on that car. It never occurred to me that my insurance was going to be as much as my car payment. Well, at the time I was living in Detroit, and Detroit has pretty high auto insurance rates. My insurance was actually more than the car payment was. For the first year that I owned that car, it seemed like every dime I earned went to supporting that car. Thankfully, after about the first year, my hours picked up at work, and that car payment became a lot more affordable. I never missed a payment. In fact, I paid it off early. But for that first year that I owned that car, I honestly thought I was going to have to turn it in because I didn't have any money left over after paying for the car note. And if I had spoken with a counselor or spoken with someone or even listened to people around me who were trying to tell me better, I would not have bought a brand new car at 21 when I was just working part time. And a lot of times when we make these types of decisions, it really impacts our short and long term life. I went and applied to my credit union. My credit union told me no. So I went to another financial institution, and they told me yes. I really wish I'd have listened to the credit union and just held off on buying a brand new car at that point in my life.
Thanks for that, Bill. So again, spending impulsively can destroy a budget even when it looks good on paper. Think ahead of time how you're going to combat that. Maybe carry less cash with you when you go to the store, or never buy an expensive item like the car unless you really sleep on it and think long and hard. Avoid saving your bank account information or debit card number anywhere online. If you have to enter the information each time, you may reconsider if you really want to do that. So if you'd like to share with us any ideas in the chat on ways that you have done to control the urge to splurge, we would love to hear those. While you guys are putting your information into chat, and again, chat it to all panelists, I'll just tell you the one thing that we did in our household. Of course, everybody knows Amazon, and we were by no means somebody that wasn't using it. We used it a lot, used it very regularly. It was just too convenient. So we decided one month, our family, that we weren't going to buy anything on Amazon for a solid month. If we really needed it, we would go to the store to buy it, which allowed us to really understand how much of it was truly that impulse splurge buys. We don't no longer keep a credit card linked to the Amazon account. So again, I have to go in and enter it if I'm going to buy something, and I take it right back out. It has significantly reduced the amount that we spend on that impulse buying. Again, if you want to throw some of those into the chat, we will share those out as well. Bill, do you see anything in the chat yet?
No suggestions about those yet, but I will say that what you just shared is something in behavioral economics is called friction costs. And friction costs can sometimes be good and sometimes they can be bad. This is an example of how we can use friction costs to help us. You talked about creating that friction where you have to put your card number in every time you want to buy something from Amazon, and that really helped you rein in your spending and get a hold of things.
Yeah. And another good thing that you could do as well is if you're worried about spending too much cash in that, maybe buy gift cards. So buy a gift card for your gas, and then you'll know that you're spending your gas budget, to where you wanted it to go. So it's just some things to think about. And if we get any added to this, we'll definitely share those out.
Next, we want to talk about the daily decisions you make as far as where you're going to spend your money. They may seem insignificant to compare it to a lot of the very large decisions you're going to have on your horizon, such as what you're going to do after school. But let's talk about some of those big decisions. Once again, we talked about the workforce. You can enter workforce full time right after school, or you can go to a community college. Maybe you're thinking about going to a trade school, or maybe you're going to go to a four-year college, or you might want to do a combination of these things. I actually started out at community college before transferring to Wayne State University, and that worked out really good for me. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work out for everyone, but it worked out good for me. So if you guys are thinking anything like that for yourselves, or for your children, go ahead and put those in the chat. But for those who may be heading to school right now, it's still nice to know about your options in case you decide to attend school at some point in the future. Planning for college isn't a one-time event. It can be a long process, but the sooner you start to plan, the better. Now, there are many choices that's going to impact your college costs. In-state schools can be a lot more affordable than out-of-state schools. However, consider all of the scholarships and grants that you may be eligible for. There may be a large difference between resident and non-resident tuition at some schools. Living off campus may be less expensive than living on campus. However, you'll need to consult with the college you attend to confirm that students are allowed to live off campus, as some colleges bar freshmen from living off campus. If you attend a community college for 2 years, tuition can be cut significantly. And while the college experience at a four-year college is something to consider, so are the additional years of paying back your student loans.
Yeah, and I know that my son attends Michigan State University, and they just implemented a new policy that freshmen and sophomores have to live on campus if they are more than 50 miles away and not living with their parents. So it is definitely something to consider about where you're going to attend and those additional costs. Next, we're going to talk about paying for college. So if you haven't already, you're going to want to talk with your family or sit down with your young adult and talk about how to pay for college. Is there a college fund? If so, find out how much you have and what are the rules for using this money. Some plans require you to go to an in-state school, while others will allow you to use that money to pay even off-campus housing. So it's really important to know if you have a college fund, if there are any guidelines attached to it. Also, applying for scholarships. Scholarships are funds awarded by a school, organization, church to help pay for some or all of the school expenses. Scholarships are often awarded based on academic merit, but can also be for other things like community service. The money does not have to be paid back. And then depending on the scholarship, you may have to attend certain schools or pursue a very specific major. So have you already started looking for scholarships or other funding sources for college? If you have and you want to share those out, if you'd put that into the chat, that would be great. We'd love to hear and share those with the other people on the call. Now, one place that I know we started in our household is with the high school guidance counselor. That's a great place to go to see what scholarships that they might be available. The schools that you're applying for may offer scholarships specifically for their students. So another great place is to talk to the financial aid office at the school. The internet does have a wealth of resources. Just be sure that you don't use any websites that charge a fee. You may also want to check with local groups you belong to, including also your parents' employer, your congregation. Even talk to Genesis about some of the scholarship programs that they participate in. So it's, again, the more you can use, the less you're going to have to borrow from other places. Now, grants are similar to scholarships in that they don't have to be paid back, but they are given out based on financial need. They're usually awarded by your state or the federal government, but some schools do also provide out grants. So part of the federal financial aid package might include work study. Here, a job is set aside for you on campus. The work study jobs tend to have more flexibility if you need time off to do schoolwork. Also, if you're not able to cover all of your college costs with the options that we have considered, we've talked about and you've considered previously, then you may have to take out some student loans. And loans that are, the student loans that are borrowed specifically for educational expenses. The loans may be paid back would be paid back with interest, and they come both federal student loans as well as private student loans. So if you're among the large percentage of students who have to opt to take out student loans, the loan choices can seem really overwhelming. So let's spend some time reviewing the features of the different loan programs. First, to get any type of grant or student loan, you will need to fill out the free application for federal student aid, otherwise known as the FAFSA, and that opens up on October 1st. Fill out that FAFSA form as early as possible, October 1st or after of your senior year of high school. Some financial aid runs out, and later applicants who are eligible may be denied funds due to lack of availability. When you fill out the FAFSA, that eligibility is good for one academic year. So that's going to run from July 1st through June 30th. You will need to fill out a renewal FAFSA each year to attend, if you're going to attend school and looking for those loans or grants. So again, each year, October 1st, you want to get that done. And you can go to fafsa.ed.gov to find the application for that. So once the FAFSA has been processed, you'll receive a student aid report, or a SAR. The SAR verifies the information that you provided on the FAFSA is complete. And the SAR also lists any expected family contribution amount. So the EFC is the expected family contribution. When the individuals evaluate your finances, they take into consideration a number of factors to determine that expected family contribution. So this includes parental as well as student income and assets, the number of family members in college, as well as how far away the parent is from retirement age. This data is used to determine how much you as the parent are expected to contribute to your student's education. The need then is calculated as the difference between the expected contribution and the cost of attending that college that you're considering. This number is really crucial because it is used to determine your eligibility for those grants and scholarships and certain loan types. So this is an important number. Once the FAFSA has been sent to the school you apply to, they will provide a financial, that will be sent to the financial aid office to determine the aid package that they can put together for you. The financial aid officer can discuss with you the details associated with their aid evaluation. Each school that you apply to may offer different packages based on the cost as well as the availability of those funds. For example, you may qualify for substantial aid at an expensive private college, but may not qualify for any aid at a less costly state university. So once you determine what you're going to be responsible for, if you haven't been able to save that up and you need to apply for student loans, there are a few options. So subsidized loans are for students who meet a financial needs test. The government is going to pay all the interest costs of the amount borrowed while you are in school, 6 months after leaving school, your grace period, and if you are in an approved deferment, which allows you to temporarily stop making your payments. So the interest rate on the subsidized loan are, they change every academic year. However, once it is set, that rate will not change while you're paying that loan back or while you're in school. So again, subsidized loans are based on a needs test. Then there are unsubsidized loans, and these are for students who do not meet a financial needs test and who need to supplement their savings, or for those students who need to supplement their subsidized loans. On these particular loans, interest will accrue while you're in school. At least they will as of January 2023. So during the forbearance period, interest was not accruing on either type of loan, but that will change in January. So you will also be paying interest while you're in repayment, and the interest rates on these unsubsidized loans are going to be the same as the subsidized. And again, once they're set for that academic year, they will not change again. They do not adjust. Then there are Parent Plus loans, and these are taken out by you as the parent or the guardian. So a credit-worthy parent may borrow up to the total cost of college attendance minus any other aid that you would receive. This program is available for parents at all income levels, regardless of need. The thing to understand is the rates on these Parent Plus loans is 2.6% higher than the subsidized and unsubsidized loans. And there may be some additional origination fees that apply. So it's really important to make sure that your student is maxing out all of the loans that they're eligible for through the federal government before you consider applying for the Parent Plus loans. And there is a separate application that you would have to fill out in order to apply for this particular loan product. And then finally, there are private student loans. These are originated by a private lender and do not include the same potential benefits and protections available with the federal loans. Interest rates, fees, repayment terms, and benefits are determined by the financial institution, and they may vary greatly. Because of this, you should exhaust all of your federal student loan options before applying for the private loans and really read the fine print. Again, some of these private loans can be adjustable, tied to a specific index, and some of these rates could become very, very high if you're not aware of what they're going to do. So again, just do your due diligence and really understand what you're applying for.
All right, thank you, Dawn. So now that that your loan options are clear, let's fast forward just a little bit and take a look at what your college years might look like. You've picked your school, you found a way to pay for it, and now you're on campus. If your parents are helping you with some of your monthly expenses, find out how much you're going to be able to help with, how much you're going to be able to contribute. My parents weren't able to help me financially once I transferred to a four-year university. So I was working full-time and went to school part-time. I pretty much paid for it myself. If your parents aren't going to be able to help you, you do have some options. Are you able to work during the summer? If so, perhaps you can put some money aside to help during the year. Will there be grant or scholarship awards to help with some of these expenses? Can you get a part-time job during the school year? If you do opt to work part-time, make sure that you don't overdo it, especially since if you're taking a full load of classes. Um, it's also, whenever your income comes in, you're going to want to continue to look at your spending choices ahead of you. You're going to want to create a budget just like you did while you were in high school to determine how much you can spend and where your money is going. You may have some new expenses like food outside of a meal plan. You'll probably have to pay for books and school supplies as well. As you budget, having a checking account is going to make it easier to manage your bills and allow you to avoid having to carry too much cash. If you haven't opened a checking account yet, this may be a good time to consider it. Genesis has many checking account options available, including one that is free with no fees. It may be a good idea to have one or both of your parents on your account so that they can deposit money into your account in the event of an emergency. Genesis also has a free mobile banking and online banking to help you manage your account. And having a checking account is a big responsibility and a great way to establish credit with the credit union.
Great, thanks, Bill. So let's fast forward again. Now you're ready to enter the workforce. So this can be an exciting time for sure. Finding that full-time job and moving out on your own are things that most of us had dreamed about since high school. However, this can be a tricky time financially. You're earning a full-time wage, but you also have student loan payments potentially and other new expenses. It can be tempting to move out on your own once you have started that full-time job. There are a few words of caution. Be sure to map out all of your expenses before signing a rental agreement. So some of the expenses that you're going to want to consider is not just the rent, but the utilities that go with it. How are you going to furnish this new apartment? What are your transportation needs? If you lived on campus for most of your college career, do you need a car? Are you going to use public transit? If you have a car, don't forget the gas and the insurance. Consider, your grocery needs. If you're going to have entertainment that you're going to want to factor into your budget, which most people will. And then, of course, those student loan payments. It's important to really think about all of your expenses now, as you will most likely not be able to rely on mom and dad anymore. You could also consider getting a roommate or two to help offset some of those expenses. This may or may not be a good choice for you. Now, you could chat with mom and dad to see if they might let you live at home for a little while longer so you can save up some additional money, create that emergency fund. So remember, though, that again, living with your folks will not be forever, and it can really help, although it can help to start your post college life out on the right footing. One of the largest expenses that you're going to have is those student loans. So let's figure out how to best manage them. So when you graduate or withdraw from school, you have a grace period before your loan starts. Subsidized and unsubsidized loans have a 6-month grace. Once that grace period ends, we encourage you to choose the option that makes the most sense in your budget and long-term goals. So again, reevaluate those goals. So let's review some of those options. So there's a standard repayment option, and this will automatically go into effect unless you request something different. This plan is usually set up to pay off that debt over a 10-year period. So whatever you borrowed with the interest that is being calculated, what is your payment going to be to get it paid in that 10-year window? 10 years seems like an incredibly long time, but that's how they calculate them. There's also graduated plans. They start with a smaller amount, and then the payments automatically go up every 2 years. Now, before choosing this option, you want to consider whether or not your income is likely to increase as you go on in your future career. Because if not, you may have difficulties managing that higher payment later on. And then an extended repayment plan stretches out how long you'll take to pay down your loans, which means significantly more interest. And we'll see an example of this here shortly. So there are a number of income-driven plans, which we'll also briefly mention here shortly. So if you really want to see what your student loan payments may look like, check out the studentloans.gov website. They have a loan simulator there. It's under the Manage Loans tab, and you can either download your actual loan data if you're getting closer and closer to finishing school, or you can estimate what you think you're going to be borrowing while you're in school. So the example here shows the option available for a student who borrowed approximately $30,000. In this case, that 10-year standard payment term results in the highest payment of $360 per month. The extended fixed day is $206, but notice that you'll pay $18,000 more in interest than the 10-year plan. So it's really important to understand your affordability and then how that's going to impact your long and short-term goals. So it's a good idea to kind of do some simulations if you know you're going to be borrowing for your education. Now, there are several options to lower your payments based on your income and household size. So again, we talked about the graduated payment, but there's also some of these extended payment, pay as you earn, revised pay as you earn, and then of course, income-based, income contingent. So it's important to really, talk with somebody about what those student loans look like. Green Path Financial Wellness, again, we're here to help support some of those conversations if and when that need comes up. But you're going to want to make sure that you're looking at not just the immediate, but how that's going to impact you in the long run. So there are even some options to forgive loans called the Public Service Loan Forgiveness. This is a program that forgives the remaining balance on your federal student loans after you make 120 payments towards those loans while working full-time for a qualifying employer. So it's important to note this does not have to be 10 consecutive years. You could work for a qualifying employee for 6 years, leave for a year, and then go back and start working for another qualifying employer, and we'll have 4 years left to make those payments. So while you're employed, you would then apply or you'd start the process of asking for the remaining balances to be waived. It was recently announced that the months that payments were not due during the COVID-19 payment pause will count towards the 120 months required under the Public Service Loan Forgiveness, meaning those who worked for a qualifying employer during this payment pause got a few years closer to loan forgiveness through this program, even though a payment was not due. So you can obtain details about this at studentloans.gov to get some more information. While your student loans are under control, hopefully you can leave some room for savings. So consider setting aside, if possible, 10% or more of your earnings into savings. And there are some different savings goals that you may want to consider. So again, emergency savings. You should strive to save maybe 3 to 6 months of your living expenses in a separate account in the event that you lose your job. If you are in a specialized field or have less job stability, you may want to aim for a little higher than that. Also, don't forget those goals. So depending on your long and short-term goals, you may want to set up separate savings accounts to help you track your progress as you work towards achieving those goals. For instance, like a car, down payment on a house, buying some new furniture for your new apartment. And then retirement. Even though you're young, it is never too early to start saving for retirement. Many employers do offer plans, and some will help fund those accounts by matching your contribution. You can even open up your own retirement account. It's a good idea to really meet with somebody that specializes in investments to talk about your options and the plan for your next steps. So you could consider reaching out to Genesis to start that conversation with their retirement services individuals.
All right, so let's take a look at establishing credit. Building good credit habits are just as important as developing good savings habits. Credit is a way of having something now and paying for it later. If you feel you're ready to have a credit card, check to see what student accounts may be available. If you're unable to obtain one on your own, you may need a cosigner, which is usually going to be a parent. Be careful that you know what your budget is and don't purchase items you can't afford to pay back. You're going to want to avoid getting into a lot of credit card debt before you even graduate from college. And trust me, it's real easy to do that, and that's something you want to avoid if you can. Using a credit card responsibly is one tool to build credit, but let's talk about, we're going to talk about other ways to build credit shortly. There are other ways to help yourself establish credit. Actually, we're going to talk about it now. So consider the following. You can open a secure credit card, and after you make a deposit, you're going to receive a card with a credit limit equal to that deposit. So say if you put down $500 as security, that's your credit limit. Now, they only touch that if you miss any payments, and they're going to mark it late as just like any other credit card. So make sure you make those payments, but it's a little bit easier to get a secure credit card. A secured loan is where you make a deposit that's used to make automatic payments to pay back the loan, and that's really designed as a way to help people establish credit. Piggybacking off of someone else's credit can work, but you have to be cautious. There are two different ways to do that. One is getting a cosigner for loans or a joint account. Remember I told you I got a cosigner for my car loan when I bought my first car. And in those situations, both parties are legally liable for the debt. If you plan to get a cosigner, are you prepared to take over the loan and car payments if the other person isn't able to? If you plan to use a cosigner, are you ready to jeopardize that relationship with your family member or friend if something goes wrong? The other way of getting credit and piggybacking off someone else's credit is being added as an authorized user, and that's generally much safer than co-signing or having a joint account holder. Basically, you have the ability to use the credit card and you are building credit, but you're not liable for any of the charges. The activity on the account does show up on your credit report, or typically it does, and can be reflected on your credit in your credit score. Now, credit can be expensive if not used wisely. As this slide shows, if you make a large purchase on a credit card and only make the minimum payments, the actual cost of the item you purchase will be significantly higher than the original price. You see there's two different scenarios. One where someone paid $1,000 for an item, another one where someone paid $5,000 for an item, and only making the minimum payments at 14.99%. It will take you 6 years and 10 months to pay off that $10,000, and you're going to pay an extra $507 in interest. For $5,000, it's going to take you 14 years, 5 months, and you're going to pay an extra $3,300 in interest. So it's important that if you do put anything on credit, purchase something with a credit card or any type of revolving debt, that if you can, you pay that balance off in full each month. If not, do your best to pay more than the minimum payment. The more you pay over that minimum payment, the quicker you're going to pay it off, and the less interest you're going to pay. Now, when reviewing your application for credit, lenders are usually going to use a credit scoring model, and they're going to take three factors into account, and they call those factors the three C's, and they are capacity, capital, and character. Capacity simply looks at whether or not you have the financial capacity to take on the credit you're looking to take out. They're going to look at your income, make sure you earn enough money to pay off that obligation. Capital is where creditors are going to look at what assets or resources you have that might be able to use to pay to be repossessed to pay back the debt if you're not able to pay it back. And while evaluating capital, creditors will want assurances that the debt can be paid from your assets, and those could be liquid assets such as money, but could also be assets such as homes or vehicles. And finally, character. Character is often the most important aspect to many creditors. They're going to know how you handle your other debt obligations. Have you been paying your creditors off on time? Have you been making those payments? They're going to want to be able, they're going to also want to verify the information provided to you on your application to determine if that's accurate. Let's review briefly what's contained in your credit report, as well as how your credit score is calculated. Your credit report is a record of your credit history. Credit reporting agencies keep and organize this information, and the information is provided to them when you apply for credit by creditors with whom you do business and through public records. There are three major credit bureaus, and that's Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. And typically, you're not going to know which bureau your lender is going to use to make the decision. And for that reason, it's important to review your credit reports from all three bureaus on a regular basis. Through the Fair Credit Reporting Act, you're actually able to obtain one free copy of your credit report each year from each of the three credit bureaus for free. And this can be done at annualcreditreport.com. Checking your credit reports will also make it easier for you to catch fraud and identity theft. Your credit score is a three-digit number that tries to quantify the likelihood of repayment. It's meant to reflect your credit risk. People often wonder what is a good credit score, and that could be a bit subjective, meaning that different people might have different ideas of what is considered good. But essentially, a good credit score is a number that matches the level of risk the lender is willing to take or accept for a particular loan or credit card. The lower the lower the score, the higher the risk. So when you have a low score, you got to pay more to borrow money. When you have a higher score, you'll be offered a better interest rate, which will cost less than if because the lender is not perceiving you as much of a risk to loan you that money. Your credit score is based on the factors on this slide. Payment history is the biggest part of your credit score. That's about 45% of your credit score. The amounts that you owe is next. That's about 30% of your credit score. The length of your credit history is about 15%. So have patience. It's going to take years to build up that length of history. New credit is about 10%. You don't want to apply for new credit too often, because every time you apply for new credit, it brings your score down a little bit. And the different types of credit, the mix of loans that you have. And so creditors want to see that you've been responsible with many different types of loans, but still it's important that you don't overdo that. Now, before you apply for credit of any kind, you may be anxious to boost your credit score by applying for a credit card. Before you do, let's review a few things. Without stable income, a credit card can easily become a crutch. It's less about the amount of income and more about consistency with creditors. Even if you have limited income, as long as it's dependable and you live within your means, you're unlikely to incur debt. If you've always outspend any income you have, you could always outspend any income you have if you're not careful. And credit cards make it a lot easier to afford an unrealistic lifestyle. Even with secure credit cards, it's important to have money and savings as backup. You can't use the security to pay the credit card unless you shut down the card. And if you have no savings and a financial emergency happens, you might have to turn to credit card and get trapped in a cycle of debt.
Thanks, Bill. So let's review some tips for using credit cards wisely. So having money in savings as a backup so you can handle any unexpected expenses without getting into debt using your credit cards is a great place to start. Second, consider only making one charge a month and make this charge an automatic bill, such as your internet or your cell phone. The reason we suggest setting up only one automatic charge is that you only need to generate activity to build a credit score. It doesn't matter how much activity. In fact, the smaller the balance, the lower your utilization, and as we learned, this represents 30% of our credit score. So set up that automatic payment. Third, the lower the utilization, the better. A general rule of thumb is to use less than 1/3 of your available credit. For small limits, this means only charging a very small amount. Fourth, while paying off an account in full does not improve your credit score per se, paying on time is what really matters. Paying off the balance in full will prevent any finance charges from accruing. It will also help you to live within your means without increasing debt. And check your credit report and score regularly for accuracy. So if you follow these tips we've discussed, you'll have excellent credit, minimal debt, a solid budget, and substantial savings. This is such an exciting time in your life with a lot of decisions to be made. While you're still young, it's important to look at each step as an opportunity to learn about personal finances and grow. The lessons learned now will help set you up for a lifetime of success.
All right, so we are just about done, but before we wrap up, we just want to just say for those of you who are new to Green Path, we're a nonprofit financial education and counseling organization. We're headquartered in Farmington Hills, Michigan, and we're licensed to serve people in all 50 states. Green Path has been helping people on their journey to financial wellness for over 60 years. We provide a variety of financial services, including one-on-one financial counseling, assessments, housing counseling, credit report reviews, and debt management. Please know that it is always free and confidential to contact Green Path. And please visit our website at www.greenpath.com/Genesis to learn more about Green Path, or call 877-274-7580 to talk with someone. Also, you can reach out to Genesis. If you'd like to talk to someone about opening up a checking or savings account, or discuss applying for credit or using their investment services. Thank you for joining us. We're going to stay online to be available to answer any questions, which you can submit via the chat to all panelists. But once again, thank you for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next time we're together with Genesis. You all have a great day.
Thank you.